Winter is coming.
You could say that again. Let's talk about how to weatherproof this home.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. You got the Hatch Homes group for our Monday housing market update and a special guest. And before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe if you're enjoying what you're seeing. So today we're going to talk about winterization. Now that might not be the most exciting topic, but when your pipes are frozen or you have water coming into your crawl space this winter, you will be very thankful that you watched this video. And plus, when we're talking about real estate, we're talking about most people's largest financial asset. I see this all the time with clients where they're not protecting it or they just don't know how to protect their largest financial asset. So this will be very important to you. And we have an expert on, Shawn with Key Beginning Inspections. Thank you so much for joining us. So Shawn,
thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Shawn, you do not only general home inspections like for purchases and sales, but you will actually do like winterization inspections for homeowners. Is that right?
Absolutely. The change of the seasons, they need the home needs different things to be up for maintenance.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us quickly a little bit about yourself, and then would love for you to just dive into like what are the things you look for when you're doing those winterization inspections, and yeah, we're excited to hear about it.
A little bit about me. I have a short history in roofing. I was a roofing assistant. I was a framing assistant. I had a very small stint in landscaping. Then I went into plumbing. Shortly after that, I was like, man, that stuff is not my game. So I went to automotive, and I was a master mechanic for 12 years at a dealership. Then a little thing called COVID happened, and I decided that automotive was not the proper direction for me. And so then I wanted to go back into real estate and that kind of construction side. So even though I am deeply a car person, I'm also a very much an architecture nerd. I really love the old school houses like Victorians or Craftsman's, and that very fine detail of the craftsmanship, all the way to the brand new constructions of the super high energy efficient homes. So I like to stay up on all that and be the most knowledgeable person I can for my clients in their homes.
Very cool. So tell us, what are the things that you're looking for this time of year to help the homeowner figure out how to protect their home?
So when we talk about like a winterization inspection, it really falls under two vastly different categories. One is the outside of the house and how to protect the outside of the house, because the number one enemy to a home is water. So we need to protect the home from water coming in. And then the second is how can we seal the house or the home up for the most energy savings, most energy efficient way we can go about that. So, I mean, we can just dive on in if you want. And
yeah.
So there was one quote that I did forget, that what is the winterization? And I had to write this down. It's to ensure the home is comfortable and the most energy efficient as possible during the winter months. So that's the quote I was looking for. So starting with the outside of the home and trying to protect it from, the evil water, right? We're going to start with the landscaping. And the biggest thing is we're looking for negative grading or grading that kind of slopes in towards the house. If you actually think about it, the vast surface area of your yard, all that water collects, and if it's got negative grading in towards the house, all that water is then sitting at your foundation, and we do not want water at the foundation. Next is going to be tree branches, any tree branches that are overhanging the roof and or walkways, because if these tree branches get frozen and there's a windstorm and they snap and fall onto the roof, it could actually damage the roof, puncture the roof, and so on and so forth, and actually cause a water leak into your attic space, and we don't want that. And then on the side of a walkway, that is a huge personal injury problem. If one of those tree branches fall, big liability. Tree branches actually weigh quite a lot. The next one is crazy. You wouldn't actually think about this, but when you have all of your leaves that you've raked up from your yard, I apologize. You can hear him over there. If you're raking up all your leaves and you kind of pile it up and be like, yeah, I'll get to it sooner or later, that pile of leaves or that pile of debris can actually promote molds and funguses from growing. And you do not want molds and funguses that close to your house, because those spores will actually fly and then get implanted into the house.
Oh,
And
interesting.
with that nice aerobic, pile of debris, also harbors insects and rodents as well. So, we don't want insects and all those things, we'll just say things, getting into the house.
I didn't even
And
think about that.
yeah, please.
No, I just never thought about that. Piles of leaves.
Yeah, it's all the little things, and that's kind of like what I try to do for my inspection, is that we find like little evidence or little things here and there, and then try to think what the cause or what can happen with those things to the actual house. Yeah, it's little things that you want to ever think about. The last thing with landscaping is, if you do have a sprinkler or irrigation, is to drain those lines, blow the water out of those lines, because if the freeze is super cold and it actually penetrates into the ground past where it usually is, it can freeze the water and burst those lines, and that can get very expensive trying to replace those irrigation lines.
Yeah. I wonder how many people remember to do that.
Not very many. So we'll go, I'll just keep rambling here. We'll go up onto the roof now, which once again, water is our enemy. We need that roof to be solid to protect the house, right? So when we're up there, we're looking for, do you have the proper flashing in all the locations that it's supposed to be? Is it sealed correctly? And is the sealant in good condition? So all these things kind of compound each other. And then any gaps or cracks within the sealant or anywhere around the home that water can get into. We're just trying to identify those so we can seal it up. The main thing about the exterior of the home is caulking or sealant. So we're gonna see that quite a bit. That's gonna be an ongoing thing.
And I was told that like that kind of stuff, the caulking and sealant, especially, and roof vents, things like that, it really starts to break down after 5 to 10 years. Like that's kind of when you have to do that maintenance. Like, so if it's been 5 years since you had a new roof, or since you had somebody up there, then probably a good idea to get somebody else up there again.
Absolutely. I always make this joke. I mean, it's not really a joke, but it's try to bring comedy to the whole thing. Is if whenever you're getting a new home and you're needing to re-caulk the outside of the siding and the windows and stuff, usually I tell my clients to start on this one corner and kind of just go through, strip off the old caulking and re-caulk the house, and just slowly through the years, kind of work your way around the house. And by the time you reach that front corner again, it's really time to do it again. So it's just a common thing. And yeah, caulking is, if it's in the sun, usually, yeah, you're looking at about 5 years until it starts to separate and crack. So it is a project, and everyone does it. Every house needs caulking, so everyone needs that to step on that maintenance. Anyways, back to the roof. Back to the roof here. When we're talking about the flashing, the vents, usually they're held in place with nails or screws or of some kind. And we need to ensure that the nail heads themselves that hold those vents onto the roof are sealed as well. Because if those nail heads are exposed, water can then land on the nail and then go around and then down into your attic. I've actually come across multiple roofs that looked amazing, had exposed fasteners, didn't really think anything of it, got into the attic, and I was actually seeing rain drips off the nails from within the attic. So they actually do leak if they're not properly sealed. Let's see. We need to address or repair any damaged shingles. Once again, especially shingles that they're overlapped, we need the water to be able to run across them and not be hindered by damage or missing granules, so on and so forth. Another big one talking about letting the water run off is that we need to actually remove all the debris off the roof itself. If your house is underneath a tree and pine needles or leaves like to kind of stack up in the corners, that can actually create a dam for the water, and it will actually sit there and hold for a little bit. So now when the shingles are overlapping on each other, the water then can recede back up those shingles and then get underneath. Once again, that leads to kind of rot to the actual structure itself. So we just need clean the debris off so it doesn't create a dam. And then that also, once we get into that freezing temperatures, we won't have an ice dam there either. So, win-win.
Yeah.
And then
I've had clients, especially this time of year, maybe the first year they owned a house, they'll call me and be like, oh my gosh, like I have water in my crawl space. And I'll be like, okay, first thing before you panic, have you looked at your gutters and have you cleaned your gutters? So I imagine you're going to the gutters next, because that is the call that I get.
Did we have a conversation before this? Because that is exactly what was next. My goodness. Okay. So the next biggest thing, which is actually a very, very large problem that people don't really think. You're like, oh, I got gutters. Okay, cool. Got gutters, whatever. But gutters are the most effective tool on your house for shedding water away, without a doubt. So major thing, clean your gutters. And then once they're clean, ensure that you have proper drainage of the gutters. So run some water up there. If you have any pooling up there, that is also a negative thing. We don't want any pooling. So they, need to be adjusted, drain all the way down. Now, the problem is, if your gutters are full of leaves and stuff like that, then obviously we have pooling, right? Then once the freezing weather comes, that entire gutter is going to be a solid chunk of ice. That is an incredible amount of weight for those gutters to be holding.
Mm-hmm.
And then even with that is that if you then have a gutter full of ice, any rain or any liquid now is just going to run off the roof, across that ice, and then down onto the ground, which that negates the whole purpose of even having gutters. And then with that, then you start developing icicles, which you're adding even more weight. So, we want to protect the house from any sort of damage. Now, when we go all the way down and we're like, okay, the rain is no longer getting caught in the gutters, but, it's just going to go to the ground. It's not that big of a problem, right? Absolutely wrong. We do not want, this is kind of like the negative grading thing. We do not want water at the foundation wall. Water mixed with dirt actually weighs an incredibly amount. So all that pressure, all that weight against a foundation wall can actually crack and damage the foundation and actually compromise the structural integrity of it. So that's the main purpose of gutters, is so no water actually gets to that foundation wall. So we got to protect that.
You want those downspouts away, like pointing water away from the foundation. That's what happens, is that the downspouts terminate right at the foundation. And you're like, well, that's why you have water in your crawl space. You got to get that away from it. Yeah.
Right. So I can't say code, but usually you need to run the downspout at least 6 feet away from the foundation. And then it would also compound if you had that negative grading away from the house. So yes, water at the foundation, it will, water's water, it will find its way in. So we just got to keep water away from it. Okay, we are going to jump into, now that we've gone landscaping and then jumped on the roof for some good reason, now we're going to go to the actual exterior of the house. So, like I said, the mantra of the winterization is caulking and or sealant. So, big things are like the siding penetrations. We're talking about the gas lines, water lines that go in through the siding. The little gap around those penetrations need to be sealed up, where it's an easy way for water to hit those lines, run on into the wall cavity, And then at that time, no one would know that there would be water in there. So it's going to just sit there. It won't have a chance to dry out, kind of producing mold. And also, during the winter months, bugs and insects like to have a nice warm home as well. So they'll find those entry points and be like, oh man, we're nice and cozy. We're never leaving. So sealing up those penetrations is, key. One thing that a lot of people don't actually think about, which is insane to me, is that your electric meter box that's on the side of your home is usually inset into your siding by, an eighth of an inch, 16th of an inch, and then it's not caulked around that meter box. When water hits the top of that meter box, it's a plate, hits that and then runs into the wall cavity. I've seen multiple times where there's been water damage behind the meter box because, water's just hitting that surface area like that and then running into the wall cavity. So once again, all those the little cracks and gaps around the house need to be sealed. When we're talking about that, we're going to go ahead and do the door and window trim as well. We're talking about the whenever you have the trim and then where it meets the siding itself, that all needs to be caulked because that's just an entryway for wind and water to get in through and actually will create a draft inside the house. So we,
I have
that's more
house.
the efficient area, but
yeah,
but keeping all that tight. Yeah, please. Sorry, I keep cutting you off.
No, I was just saying I've got an old house, so I've got lots of drafty windows and doors. I probably should check the caulking.
Well, we might address some things that we can do. All right.
Yeah.
So and then anyways, the trim is also wood. So you don't want any water getting in behind that because it actually could rot out that trim, kind of exacerbating the problem. And then, so a big controversial topic here is sealing up your crawl space vents. Yes, no. I have passed, realistically, I'm kind of a nerd. So the last year or so, I've been reading reports on yes, seal, yes, or no, don't seal. And it came down to a big study, actually, because this was a very, very hot topic, I guess. You are definitely supposed to seal up your crawl space vents. We do not want that cold air or cold wind underneath the house, because that, once again, we can create drafts and a cold sink within the house. So seal those up. Let's not have wind go up underneath the crawl space. And this is actually a good opportunity to look at each vent themselves and see if there's any damage to the screens, because just like bugs, all those furry critters also want to find a nice, warm, dry place to roost during the winter. So while you're there sealing up those crawl space vents, you can see what condition the screen is to keep those little guys away.
And then you're supposed to open those crawl space vents, right? At some point
during the spring. So you're supposed to open them as the warm air is kind of going around. You want that warmer air to then be accessed through there because water or moisture is going to be, I would say, creating a higher humidity level underneath the house. So you don't want high humid air just sitting under your house, because then that promotes mold. So during those circumstances, especially the warm air and all that stuff creates mold, right? So during the warmer months or spring or so on and so forth, you want airflow, ventilation, especially houses in the Pacific Northwest. They need to breathe. We're in a very unique climate. It's not super, super humid, not dry by any means, not super, super wet either. So it really promotes a lot of mold. And ventilation is what our houses need here.
Yeah.
Okay, jumping in back to the exterior. And this is, now that we're kind of moving into the winter months, this is the time to disconnect those hoses from the hose bibs outside. I don't think we're going to be washing our cars that much or, watering the flowers. So taking the hose off the hose bib, kind of drain the water out. Hoses aren't super expensive, but also, do we want those to crack and break? Yeah, probably not. And then if I will say this, most houses have the ability to turn the water off at the actual hose bibs. So on a lot of houses I've inspected, there's a little gate valve or a screw valve underneath a bathroom sink or a kitchen sink, and you're like, I have no idea what that thing's for. A lot of those are for shutting the water off to the exterior. So my home, the valve is actually in the garage. It's just a random valve sitting on the wall, and super weird. But anyways, a lot of houses, I would say easily 90% of the houses have a valve somewhere to turn the water off to the exterior. And why that's important is those water lines that are on the exterior walls are the most susceptible to splitting, freezing and splitting. And then what we were kind of alluding to earlier in the conversation is, we don't want all that water damage. Most people don't want to create a swimming pool in the basement. I don't want to, but to each his own. But we also don't want to be forced into that as well. So if we turn that water valve off, underneath the kitchen sink or the garage or wherever it may be in your particular house, then we can go to each hose bib and drain those lines out to kind of protect it and winterize it, so we won't have a danger of splitting.
Yeah.
A little side thing here. You can also upgrade those external hose bibs to a frost protected hose bib, which actually sets the valve that actually turns the water off about 12 inches into the wall instead of it sitting right there at the exterior of the wall. So kind of another layer of protection. And then to top all that off, get that little $2 styrofoam cone to put on around your hose bib.
I'm doing that this weekend. That's my project.
Yeah, it's incredibly cheap, and it actually does cut down the cold air hitting that hose bib. I'll come up with the words. And then we'll go to, this is kind of outside, kind of not outside, but we're going to jump into it anyways. On the topic of water lines, this is going to be primarily in the crawl space area. It's kind of outside. The crawl space area. You need to have your water lines insulated for two things. You want your water lines insulated so the cold doesn't freeze them and end up rupturing the lines, obviously, right? And now on the flip side, we're going to talk a little bit about the energy efficiency thing. If you insulate that hot water side, the warm side, you will not be cooling the water down as the water goes through the line. Think of how much I would have to say a good 20-30 feet of line is going to be ran underneath the house, and if all that line is exposed to the cold air, all your hot water is cooling down. So then in return, you're going to be using more hot water and heating it up even higher just to be able to get a decent temperature at your actual faucet. So warm side needs to be insulated for energy savings, and cold side needs to be insulated to protect from freeze and rupture. Last thing for the actual exterior, and another thing that a lot of people don't really think about, but it's testing all your exterior lighting. You have no idea how many bulbs are missing or lights that just don't work on the exterior. It's actually astounding. Testing to make sure those lights actually work, because now we're going to work in the dark and we're coming home in the dark. So, I personally want to see, where I'm walking. That's just me. I'm a weird guy. So making sure that the lights actually work is quite beneficial.
Yeah, the
exterior.
So are there any little tips or tricks or things that people neglect that are maybe small that end up causing a lot of damage?
Absolutely. The biggest thing, especially during the winter, is actually house fires. There's about a 3x increase in home fires, house fires during the winter rather than summer, which is absolutely incredible. So the biggest tip that I've got to tell everyone is get your chimneys inspected by a certified chimney sweep. So he's going to go through, clean it, and inspect the actual integrity of that chimney. Obviously during the winter, we're going to have, fires and, create this nice ambiance in the house. So make sure that those are clean and actually functional, properly functionable. And then with that, we're talking about fires here, is that during the winter, this is your prime opportunity to replace the batteries in your smoke detectors and your CO detectors. Now, you might have thought like, oh, no, test the smoke detectors. No, I said replace the batteries in your smoke detectors and your CO detectors. We're talking about a couple of dollars here, and that will actually save your life. We don't want to just rely on the button on the detector. And why I have to say with the smoke, because of the rise in house fires, but also on the same side, I'm talking about CO detectors, because the house is going to be sealed up. The windows are up, doors are shut. So, we can't really smell or taste the CO, the carbon monoxide. So we actually want to make sure those detectors are properly functioning and, replace that $2 battery.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I don't really hear people say that. It's usually just test them. It's good. Like it's only $2. Might as well.
Yeah, it can save your house, can save your life, right? Talking about that, so we're gonna jump into a couple weird things that can actually like really save your house on kind of like I guess it is kind of energy efficient thing that a lot of houses don't have, and that's check your weather stripping and door sweeps at your main entrance or your back entrance. You have no idea how much cold air comes through that door, because it's got to be openable, it's got to have gaps and stuff, but make sure that those are all nice and sealed up. We're going through some notes here. So a weird random tip for home maintenance here. This is for everyone. Schedule your furnace services during the late summer. When it's hot, when it's 90 degrees, call your HVAC guy out to come service your furnace, because just like, 90% of the people out there, as soon as that first cold snap happens, they're like, oh, it's time to turn that furnace on. Are you 100% sure that thing's going to turn on when you need it to? Because a lot of people, it will not. And now you have thousands of people calling your HVAC guy to come service the furnace all on the same day, because it's cold everywhere, right?
And
so knock out that furnace.
A tip that a client told me is that Northwest Natural, you could schedule furnace inspections. So Northwest Natural will come out and inspect your furnace for free, which is awesome. So at least you'll know, hey, like my it's working, and and all that good stuff. So you could schedule that for free.
It's so funny. It's funny to think about it. We're going to talk about servicing the furnace in the summer, and we're going to talk about scheduling and servicing your AC during the late winter or early spring when it's still cold outside. Same thing happens.
Mm-hmm.
Another weird one is, think about installing like a heavy curtain or upgrading into a honeycomb window blind, because that will actually create an insulative layer from all that cold air coming through your windows, which a lot of people don't think about. It's absolutely amazing. Another weird one. I'm sure everyone's heard about this. But reversing the direction that your ceiling fan runs. So
I didn't know you could do that.
Okay. So we'll start with where that switch is. Some ceiling fans just got a little black toggle switch on the actual frame, kind of where the blades are at, and you can switch that and we'll turn the direction. On mine, you have to take the where the bulb is, that cover, and there's a little black toggle switch that will reverse. And
what
why
does
I say this
direction do?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. We're going to jump into that. So during the summer, and when the fan is actually running the proper way, it's bringing down all that air to kind of cool you off, right? It's a normal fan. But if you switch that, then it's going to be sucking air up and going towards the ceiling. Now, the whole purpose of that is warm air rises, right? So we're grabbing the cold air from lower, pushing it up, and it's getting heated by the warmer air that's already in the room, and then cycling back down. So it's hitting the roof, coming back, hitting the walls, coming and circulating air like this.
Mine just runs on high year round. just doesn't. I just don't turn it on.
Usually
a
mine
champ.
does too, so we're fine. Let's see. We're gonna kind of hop on that protecting your home from fires thing. It's also, once we start doing that winterization or the winter kind of maintenance thing, is we need to clean out those dryer vents. And I'm not talking about, the little lint trap in front of the dryer. No, we're talking about removing the dryer off the wall and cleaning the vent that, the exhaust is what I'm trying to say. Because, a lot of buildup happens. Critters like to come into that vent and, get nice and toasty warm and create a blockage. Dryers actually run very, very hot and actually can ignite that lint. So kind of stay proactive on that one. One more tip around around the home and kind of creating a nice comfortable space that almost no one does is actually going up in the attic and making sure you have proper ventilation at the soffit vents around the perimeter of the home. A lot of times the insulation will kind of blow over and kind of block those vents. And like I was saying earlier, is houses need to breathe. The crawl space is going to be sealed, but all that warm air rises and goes into the attic space. So if we don't have proper ventilation at the soffit vents, then it actually creates a super high humid environment in the attic. And actually, this is what causes those major mold blooms in the attic space, which I see all the time. And it could be fixed, or kind of just, it won't ever be there if we had that proper ventilation. And if that mold sits there for a prolonged period of time, it will start eating away at the wood of your sheathing. And then now we're talking about needing to replace a roof just because of ventilation.
Yikes. Yeah, that's a good one. I think in inspections, a lot of times we see insulation blown over those soffits. So it's a good reminder.
It kind of sounds like the bottom line is there's a lot of things that could kind of compound together and really hurt or really help your home. And so
absolutely. And that's the name of the game is, this thing causes this thing to spiral downhill, which causes all these other things to go, south as well. So it's really staying up on those maintenance items and trying to, help prevent any of the bigger issues.
So Multnomah County has a weatherization program. Reach out to us for details and we can get you connected. You do have to be able to qualify for it, but reach out and we can get you connected there.
Yep. Yeah, they have a cool program that can help people weatherize their home. I think they call it Weatherize. We're calling about winterization, but I think it's the same thing, right? But thank you so much, Shawn, for all your tips. I know that you have a lot more, but that's probably why somebody should just hire you to do the full inspection. I know that I don't want to go in my attic. That does not sound fun for me to go check on my own soffit. So thanks so much. And if you have any questions, please reach out, and thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.